Country music is unlike most other popular music genres, and for a host of reasons. One of the things that makes country music unique, especially in the modern context, is there is a natural resistance to using technology as a crutch, especially in live performance. This is due in part to the rootsy nature of the music. At the beginning, even drums and electronic instruments were considered verboten in the genre. Country music is humans impressing fingers on wood and wire and singing from the gut and soul in the beautiful imperfection of authentic expression. Now granted, if you've turned on your local mainstream country radio station in the last 15 years, you've probably heard plenty of electronic-derived beats, auto-tuned vocals, or other technological enhancements. But generally speaking, country music is the last bastion where it's actual musicians playing actual music as opposed to some guy up on a stage behind a console or composing a song or album solely on their laptop. Most people know what auto-tune is, meaning either software or hardware that corrects the pitch of a singer to make it sound perfect, even though it takes a sensitive ear to actually hear it being employed in music. Lip syncing is a commonly known term too, and similarly, it might take a trained eye to see when a singer is not actually performing live. But not as many people probably know what backing tracks are, in part because unless you're a musician yourself, it can be hard to spy their use. Long story short, backing tracks are pre-recorded music broadcast through the speakers at a live performance to mimic live players on stage, but the players aren't actually there. Or sometimes the players are there, but in the case of award shows or televised performances, producers insist on perfection, and so they want players to mime to the music as opposed to perform it live. Sometimes backing tracks are derived from the studio recording of the song, meaning what you hear when you turn on the radio or a streaming service. Sometimes they're pre-recorded before a performance, so they're somewhat unique to the live context. But either way, just like auto-tune and lip-syncing, backing tracks are generally discouraged in country music because they can come across as deceptive to the audience, among a host of other dubious and concerning downstream effects. Over the history of country music, there have been moments when the use of backing tracks has been strongly resisted by performers. When J.J. Cale's song Crazy Mama became his first top 40 hit in 1971, he was invited on Dick Clark's American Bandstand TV show to perform the song. When Cale and his band arrived at the studio and started unloading their amplifiers, the producers told them there was no need. They would just act like they were playing to the recorded single. J.J. Cale refused, and despite Dick Clark's pleadings, left the studio. The moment was chronicled in a really cool animated video produced by the New York Times shortly after Cale's death in 2013. In 1993, Garth Brooks played 3 consecutive shows at Texas Stadium for a big NBC television special. These were the shows where Garth Brooks notoriously flew over the stadium crowd on wires in one of the most polarizing moments in country history. Though the Friday and Saturday shows were ticketed and fans were charged an admission fee, the Sunday show was free. Why would the notoriously money-driven Garth Brooks play a whole show for free? Because during the 3rd show, Garth was scheduled to mime to backing tracks as opposed to performing live. That way they could take footage from the 3rd night and make the NBC special look perfect. Not wanting to deceive his fans, Garth was up front with the audience and played free of charge. Perhaps the most notorious moment of a country artist protesting the use of backing tracks came at the 1994 ACM Awards. Held in Los Angeles, Alan Jackson walked away that night with the Top Male Vocalist Award and co-hosted the event with Reba McEntire. But when it came to performing what would be his upcoming #1 single and one of the signature songs of the era called Gone Country, Alan Jackson couldn't sit right with the charade the ACMs wanted to pull on their audience. Before the show, producers told Alan that he had to play to a pre-recorded rhythm section track, which Jackson clearly felt was tantamount to lying to both his fans and the audience. So instead of playing along, Jackson tipped off the audience to the subterfuge by telling his drummer Bruce Rutherford to play without sticks. So as the performance transpires and everything sounds perfect, there is Alan Jackson's drummer, swinging his arms like he's playing the drums, but with no sticks in his hand. Trust the ACMs never asked Alan Jackson to play to a backing track again. But how do many country performers feel about auto-tune, backing tracks, and machine beats in country music in the present day? Well, during the height of bro country from about 2012 to about 2018, these things became way more permissive in the country mainstream. Since many of the beats in country music were derived from drum machines to begin with, you also had to use them as backing tracks in concert. But over the last few years, especially as the bro country era has slowly faded away and a new traditional country resurgence has come to the forefront, backing tracks have been more and more discouraged and less prevalent once again. Even Morgan Wallen said in a recent interview with Theo Von that his last album had plenty of trap beats, but for his new album he said, quote, "This time I was like, let's just tone that back. I think if I'm tired of it, they're probably tired of hearing it," unquote. Meanwhile, on the independent and Americana side of music with artists like Cody Jinks, Zach Bryan, Sierra Farrell, the Turnpike Troubadours, and Tyler Childers, using trap beats and backing tracks is so extremely rare and deterred, it's basically non-existent, and shocking whenever you attend a festival catering to non-radio country stars and see someone using them. That is exactly what happened with one particular artist named Ian Munsick, who touts himself as a Western music revivalist. Ian Munsick seems like a great dude. He also has many skins on the wall to be able to proclaim himself a true Western artist. He grew up on ranches in Wyoming, and since the age of 10, he was singing in a Western band with his two older brothers and father. Ian Munsick's brothers, Sam Munsick and Tris Munsick, are both excellent Western traditional country artists with incredibly underrated and under-the-radar music. But Ian moved away from the West to attend Belmont University in Nashville, graduating with a songwriting and music business degree, and eventually got signed to Warner Brothers Records. Wherever Ian Munsick's heart and perspective started, and now has been at least somewhat institutionalized in the music row perspective, including the use of backing tracks. The first time Saving Country Music witnessed Ian Munsick perform was at Miles Zero Fest in Key West, Florida in early 2023. This is when it became obvious something was very off, and he'd been worked over in Music Row's image. As was said at the time, quote, "It took a matter of minutes to recognize Munsick had no bass player, or backing vocalists, or other instruments that you heard but did not see on stage. Playing the backing tracks does not go over well in Texas red dirt music, and Munsick should have known that. Perhaps in the mainstream, the practice is fine, or even par for the course. But this ain't the mainstream, and with the way Munsick plays up his Wyoming cowboy roots, it all ultimately came across as disingenuous and out of place, even if some of the lyricism touched on Western themes." This is nothing personal against Ian Munsick, and this isn't even one of those authenticity arguments about him trying to be something that he isn't, per se. But the fact that Ian Munsick is regularly booked at independent country festivals where fans and fellow performers are usually shocked to see backing tracks used, it felt like somebody needed to say something. And so on April 22nd, Saving Country Music did, inspired in part by a Rolling Stone profile that said about Ian Munsick, quote, "His music is so tethered to the culture and lifestyle of his rural Wyoming upbringing that it's likely Munsick the artist wouldn't exist without it," unquote. For the record, Ian Munsick's recorded music also includes electronic beats, auto-tune, pop-oriented sounds and arrangements, songwriting by committee, and other things emblematic of the music row environment where his music emanates from. Do some, if not many, of his songs speak about the West? Sure they do, but even some of this is in a caricaturist notion of Western themes, almost like Western hype music as opposed to the type of storytelling and thematic character study most true Western music employs. Why does it even matter if people are portraying Ian Munsick as being so tethered to the culture and lifestyle of his rural Wyoming upbringing? First off, because it isn't. And second, because you actually do have true Western artists like Colter Wall, Wiley in the Wild West, Noeline Hoffman, and Ian's own brothers Sam and Tris, who risk being overlooked when a music row machination like Ian Munsick is presented to the public in an attempt to recapture some of the Western attention at the moment due to things like the Yellowstone TV series and bring it back under the control of the mainstream. For Ian Munsick's part, he took Saving Country Music's criticism generally in stride. Along with admitting to his use of backing tracks, Munsick said in a statement, quote, "If spreading Western music to a new audience isn't saving country music, then I don't know what is. I produce my records, play on my own records, and engineer my own records. That's why it doesn't fit in anywhere, yet fits in everywhere. It's me, not someone else telling me who to be." Let's talk about backing tracks during live shows. There is a right way and a wrong way. I record my own backing tracks, play multiple instruments live on stage, and have a badass band behind me every single night. I'm an entertainer. I just can't sit there and strum. Finally, I would strongly recommend getting some fresh air. Doesn't have to be in the mountains of Wyoming. Just go touch some grass. Happy Earth Day. Though Ian Munsick is patently wrong when it comes to the use of backing tracks, especially when you're trying to portray yourself as someone spreading Western music to a new audience, you have to appreciate Ian Munsick's honesty and his willingness to stand up for himself. Is the fact that he records his own backing tracks, meaning he isn't using someone else's pre-recorded music to play to in concert, make Ian Munsick's use of backing tracks more forgivable? Perhaps to some very slight degree, but it in no way absolves the overall and underlying concern about the practice. Aside from the deceptive nature of backing tracks, what are the other drawbacks to using them? If singers are performing to pre-recorded music, that means the music itself can't breathe because the length and the beat of the songs has been predetermined before the event even starts. The musicians playing live must stay in sync with the recorded music, so they can't decide to play a song a little bit faster or slower than normal. The guitarist can't take an extra solo if he's feeling it. There's less opportunity for improvisation and spontaneity, which is one of the greatest assets of live music. Folks can't always shout out requests from the audience and have them fulfilled. Most everything is already scripted out. Most importantly, though, being permissive to the use of backing tracks is an existential threat to many professional musicians, especially bass players, drummers, backup singers, rhythm guitar players, and even lead instrumentalists. It can make it okay to replace these humans vital to music with technology. To replace them with backing tracks is to misunderstand the magic of live music and why millions of people go to country music concerts every year. Think of some of the world-class side players in country music and what they have meant to the music over the years. Think of Joanna Cotton, who along with being a solo artist, was a backup singer for years behind Eric Church and brought that extra soul and energy to live performances. Think of the drummer for the Red Clay Strays, John Hall, and how animated he is on stage, and how he composes the heartbeat of that band. Think of bass player Omar Oyoki of Silverado, who when brought on board, turned what was a local Austin honky-tonk band into what many consider to be one of the best live bands in all of country music. In the aftermath, you also had some Ian Munsick fans saying that nearly all live performers use these backing tracks, and it's not a big deal. But luckily, we actually have an example in a control study of how artists and the general public felt about backing tracks before the whole Ian Munsick imbroglio was ignited. In December of 2024, so just a few months prior, viral country star Oliver Anthony had gone on a viral rant about his experiences in the country music business. Many of the things he said in the rant were actually spot on, though others highlighted his naivete about the music business and were things he probably should have known better about. But the biggest takeaway from the rant and what stirred the most controversy is when Anthony basically accused every single performer in the country music industry of using backing tracks.
But people don't realize that like a band can go play a festival, make $450,000 for standing on stage for an hour, and you're only listening to half the band because a lot of these mainstream acts, especially in country, more than any, like these country music festivals, everybody runs backing tracks. Like, I never forget, I won't say who the act is, but it was I think it was in South Carolina at the Myrtle Beach one, the band who played after us. That dude had 6 auto-tune modulators on a pedal board on stage just to help him with vocal pitch live, and they had backing tracks running, drum loops running. It's like, for somebody to pay hundreds of dollars to go listen to like a fake performance, just, you know, nobody talks about that stuff, but it was so interesting. It got to the point, I didn't even know that there was such things. I figured backing tracks and fake vocals were something like, you know, you hear like, maybe you think NSYNC did that in the early 2000s, you know.
Now you might think with the way backing tracks, auto-tune, and drum loops are so polarizing among country music purists, traditionalists, and independent fans, folks aligned on that side of country would be pumping their fists at Oliver Anthony's rebuke of performers using technology to fool their audiences. But this isn't what happened at all. Since Oliver Anthony concluded his quote with, "They all do it," he basically implicated all of country music's performers, including the non-radio artists who would never use autotune, drum loops, and backing tracks. Many country artists and their fans took it very personal that Oliver Anthony painted with such a broad brush during his rant, especially since his accusations were so off the mark. Taking Oliver Anthony's quotes, fans also started deducing that he might be specifically talking about Parker McCollum, who performed after Anthony at the Carolina Country Music Festival in 2024. Parker McCollum subsequently responded in a video saying, quote,
"Hey guys, per the Oliver Anthony interview or whatever it was, claiming that he saw drum loop modulars or whatever he called it, I don't even know what that is. 100% fabricated lie. Never, ever, ever one time have I used auto-tune or a drum loop or anything fake of any kind on stage. Me and my guys are ripping it the real deal every single night. It has never been one single part of our show, not one note that was not live, raw, and in the moment. A 100% fabricated story that is 100% a lie, and that will never change. We will always be out there really swinging it as a real band, trying to do our best to respect country music." So that's all I got to say on it, and that's where it needs to end. Thank y'all.
For the record, Oliver Anthony never named Parker McCollum. He could have meant a different performer, and it could have been a different festival. But Parker McCollum had no choice but to respond, because the accusations could be so undermining of his credibility as a country artist. And Parker wasn't the only one who had choice words for Oliver Anthony. Paul Cawthon also chimed in saying, quote,
"Oliver Anthony, shut your mouth. You talk about people using auto-tune and people boosting up ticket prices and you yelling and screaming at people that are talent buyers that want to bring you in and give you money to do what we do. All you are is ruining relationships, and you're hurting people that actually work in our industry. Now, I know you don't get it because you're used to being out in the mud and the holler. But here in Texas, we have songwriters and a lot of people that have been working in this business before you were playing your little TikTok songs. Okay? I love that you think you're holier than thou, but you're really hurting people out there. So I want people to understand, when you think this Oliver Anthony guy is just the best and hung the moon, actually he's screwing people over. So keep your ass and your mouth shut.
The aftermath of Oliver Anthony's rant really underscores how large swaths of country music performers feel about the use of backing tracks. As Saving Country Music said at the time of the Oliver Anthony rant in December 2024, referencing Ian Munsick specifically, quote, "When you go to an actual country music festival or an independent music festival, you never see auto-tune or backing tracks being used. And when you do, it sticks out so starkly, it's shocking. This is some of the polarization surrounding Ian Munsick, who is the only artist you will ever see at an independent festival playing the backing tracks. So when Oliver Anthony says this practice is all over country festivals, he's sharing an uninformed opinion." Unquote. Rolling Stone's opinion was also uninformed when they touted the Western bona fides of Ian Munsick's music. To many, being a Western artist is embodying a raw, natural, live, and decidedly organic approach to music that backing tracks are considered the absolute antithesis of. It's unfortunate that despite the criticism, Ian Munsick has decided to double down on the use of backing tracks. This can and will continue to limit the audience of his music and open him up to continued criticism. And this isn't just one person's opinion. This is the prevailing sentiment throughout the musicians and fandom that Ian Munsick is looking to appeal to. Could Ian Munsick's effort to work in more contemporary sounds and styles broaden the appeal of Western music to a more mainstream audience? Sure it could. But adding a bass player and other live musicians to his live show will only enhance that experience. And as a popular artist, he clearly has the financial capability to do so. Because this is country music, and as most all audio entertainment goes digital, automated, or outright AI generated, country music specifically, and Western music especially, can and should be the one place where it's still real-life humans expressing themselves through the medium of music, sweating and crying out human emotion, devoid of electronic filters, right there for you on stage. Like Parker McCollum says, live, raw, and in the moment. That is country music.